call and try to get justice. I actually went through with writing appeals. I wrote to the president, everybody will say bring to the chairman. I discovered that, they wanted to stall until it was practically impossible for you to move over to another party. By December, when I went to the secretariat and discovered that they had all gone on Christmas holiday, I decided that I had had enough. I left the party. One thing my people said was, if anywhere you go, we'll go with you.
I was in my house in the middle of the night, one of the contender, and I said, Madam, don't you know what is happening? I said, your slot has been given to someone else.
Like my local government now, I'm involved in the screening committee of the chairman and the councillors. Since yesterday, I have been on phone. They have been phoning me that they have washed out all those that we have arranged to be the chairman. Why? Because the power brokers there, they have already made their selections. They have already nominated those that are going to contest the elections, and they are not right people. And nobody is talking about it, and nobody is going to do anything about it. And they are going to go to that office, and they will continue to mess up like they did.
One of the problems that set in later was this business of replacing candidates here when their constituencies had said, this is the person we want. Yeah. Out of the blues, a name comes up and drops the one that was submitted. I couldn't see myself doing that because I had no right.
How did this practice take hold? Ambassador Judith Atta, who has been studying the situation since her days as the First Minister of Women Affairs, provides an explanation.
We were the first victims. After that, they did that to the men. The men want to be, they are popular, and somebody comes from headquarters or somewhere and says, no, it's this person. You should calm down.
A clear case of the popular saying, when they came for the Jews, I was not a Jew, so I kept quiet. Then they came for the Catholics. I was not a Catholic, so I kept quiet. Then they came for the gypsies. I was not a gypsy, so I kept quiet. Then they came for the blacks. I was not a black, so I kept quiet. And then they came for me, and nobody was there for me. This mine must now be fought by all within the parties if the will of the people is not to be thwarted by a few. Violence or outright confrontation is another method used for marginalizing women within the party. There is the psychological violence of simply ignoring a woman who has indicated with a show of hand that she wants to speak. A variation of this violence is that of ignoring the contribution of the women at the decision-making organ of the party and simply carrying on as if a significant contribution has not been made. Physical violence sometimes takes place at political meetings.
Men are sometimes intolerant. They bully them. I've had an experience where some men beat up a woman officer in the party because they said she was standing in their way. They slapped her twice. She had a red eye for many days. We nearly took these guys to the police. They started pleading for mercy, but we said to them, you have no authority to beat up a woman. So people do get really violent. It's like, what's this woman doing here? Who told her to come here? It's a high degree of intolerance.
In some rare cases, men can also be at the receiving end.
There are a few women who are sometimes hot-tempered. I've seen a woman slap a party leader before at night. Luckily, he didn't slap her back. But we all called her, and she broke down and wept and apologized. But she felt she was being done out of the race, and that the fellow didn't like her. We had to plead for the man to forgive her and so on.
These political shenanigans are partly responsible for discouraging women from participating in politics. And yet, women, as of right and for the survival and greatness of the nation, must participate in politics and governance.
You find out that, sadly enough, we women do the bulk of the job. We sing the songs. In fact, we not only sing them, we compose them. the songs we use as our political jingles. We organize the rallies. You find if you go to any rally in any part of the country, the percentage of women to the men is 70-30. We encourage our male children to come out and help them paste posters. So the only way we can have a say is to sit down on the table at the beginning of campaign and say, we're coming into this because this is what we want. To say, we will not help you, we will not join you, we will not sing behind you, we will not dance behind you, except you give us this slot. So that's how it's going to be.
The eagle cannot fly, let alone soar with only one wing.
We should throw it back to the governors. You are talking about democracy dividend. Is it road that is democracy dividend? It is a human person. So what changes have you made in the life of a person with this democracy dividend? What is it?
We have the potentials to soar because 50% of the women are there. That's one wing of the eagle. And if you don't have that, then you ain't going to soar anywhere. So right now we're a bit lopsided. So we're not soaring to the heights that we should be. But let's strengthen that wing and we will soar.
How can the parties ensure that women actually participate in politics against all these odds?
Don't forget that the men are still largely in control. Unless you have a team of national executive members who are saying, hey, wait a minute, the ratio is too narrow. We've got to let more women in. And therefore we are going all out to be prejudiced in favor of the women. The chances are that what happened will always happen.
How does the Nigerian terrain compare with other democracies? A comparative study of some figures from other African countries gives the following. Nigeria, with women constituting 10.4% of the total figure in the House of Representatives, 8.29% of the total figure in the Senate, and only 6 deputy governors out of 36 governors and then 36 deputies, is down in the doldrums with countries like Ghana and Kenya. Uganda, Namibia, South Africa, Rwanda are way ahead of us, with Rwanda leading the group and the world, with women constituting over 50% of the figure member in parliament. Liberia, though low in the number of women in parliament at 5.1% in their newest chance at democracy, have recorded a feat by voting in a woman as president, the only one on the African continent. How have their parties been able to be part of this success? The answer? Affirmative action in the constitution of the parties as well as in their nation's constitution.
The constitution, which is the prime law, gives us that extra protection. Starting from the lowest elective level, that is the voice level, the village level. In the constitution, we put a minimum of 30%. So now you find that in all positions of governance, elective offices, the women must have a minimum of 30%. And I must say that the women of Uganda have done very well. Because in the local government, in the local governance, they have gone beyond the 30%. They are now at about 44% in the local leadership. And at the national level, in parliament, we are one of the 5 Commonwealth countries which have achieved 30%. We are now at 31 point something %. And we have achieved this through double approach. One is the creating affirmative action through competition between women, and one woman goes to parliament. So out of the 85 districts, we have 85 women who have come through that window. But we also left the window open to those women who can compete on the general ticket. A number of women have competed on the general ticket. From the last election, from the 2 elections in 2001 to the elections of 2006, the number doubled of those on the constituency from 17 to about 38 now. My colleague here came in on the affirmative action in Parliament, and I came in on the general constituency, through the general constituency competition.
If you look at our president, who is very gender sensitive, also the Constitutional Commission members, majority of the men who are serving on this electoral commission, the Constitutional Commission, are also very gender sensitive. These are progressive leaders. So it was very easy for us when we advocated for a gender sensitive constitution, which we are really proud of today, because it's like the anchor of women promotion, of our gender policy. So the constitution, the members of the Constitutional Commission, who were predominantly men at that time, were very, very progressive. And our constitution is a very young constitution. It was initiated in 2003. And we managed to really get a very big niche for the women, because the constitution provides for at least 30% of all of women in decision-making organs, at least minimum. So if you look at our parliament today, we enjoy a 48% representation. If you look at our cabinet, we enjoy 36%. And I'm proud to tell you that when we talk about percentages, we're not just talking about the women, we're talking about the quality and the expertise these women are bringing to these positions.
How is Nigeria to catch up? There is need for affirmative action to redress the imbalance in the party hierarchy, in the committees, and in the constituting party delegates. However, the principle of affirmative action is very often misunderstood, sometimes even by the people it is supposed to favor. How is affirmative action viewed by some party executives?
You don't develop democracy through affirmative action. It will not work like that. This is democracy. You can't reserve positions for people. They must be interested. And they must compete like any other person. They have to be elected. If you just reserve it for women, then that is no longer democracy. Then you are just appointing people like in the military regime. So it is against the democratic principle to reserve position for women. And women, you have to stand up. I don't believe that women have any less quality than men, or anything that hinders them participate in politics.
This view is not very different from the one held by another politician in the Ghanaian parliament, which probably explains why both Ghana and Nigeria are in the lowest rank where women's participation in governance is concerned.
It is receiving mixed response. Mixed response in the sense that though people accept that women being part of parliament enhances democracy, political parties also think about the winnability of their candidates. So that if you say we should set aside 30% of our seats to women, are we saying they are going to be winnable candidates, or we should just allow women of substance to come up on their own and contest? Even it may surprise you to know that some women groups are saying no, they shouldn't be given that sort of silver platter treatment. Other than that, they will be looked down upon. So they must be allowed to contest the seats on their merit, and not that the seat was set aside for them.
A less talked about party activity hinted at by Hajia Maimuna, a woman leader, is that in which women politicians rally round to campaign for a male politician. On election into the executive post, the women campaigners are likely to find themselves in a dilemma as regards their relationship with a wife or first lady of the chief executive.
During the last general elections, we said, well, we will not campaign for a man whose wife will sit at home. And then when the electorates come and say they want to see their governor, the wife will say, what are they looking for now? Every day they come to this house. What is it self? So we said, no deal. Every woman who wants to be first lady, she should come and earn it and work for it. So you follow us in the sun to dance. You follow us under the rain to sing. You follow us to go through all the ills and all of the attacks we go through as female politicians. You will follow us to go through it. So when we come as women to say to the governor, this is what we want, you will help us cry. And then you ensure that we get it.
How does this view tally with the principles of democracy?
When you talk about women's participation, it's about human rights. It's about democracy. Democracy to us is about participation.
Do Nigerian parties not advocate the principles of affirmative action at all? The ruling party's constitution, as referred to earlier in its Article 13, Section 24 on equal opportunities, says, without prejudice to the provisions of the Constitution, the principle of federal character shall be observed in the appointment of election of members of the executive committees at all levels of the party.
It becomes more obvious to us that the most effective way of addressing this problem is through affirmative action. And you asked me, what is affirmative action?
So I believe affirmative action is a positive action and which should be applied until the desired goal is achieved, so that we can adequately place women where they need to be and correct the current statistics, which shows very, very low representation in a country where we are supposed to be 50-50. If you look at the American system, they had affirmative action when the blacks were seriously marginalized. Look at where America is today. They have a black American president.
Is the federal character not a form of affirmative action?
Affirmative action, which is provided in this document, as well as the Beijing Platform for Action, which Nigeria also signed on to, specifies for temporary mechanism, a temporary mechanism to be put in place to redress the past historic wrongs that have been done to a particular section of Nigerians or a people, depending on where it is. The federal character system is affirmative action. All it is saying is put in place some form of mechanism to bridge a gap that is existing.
What is the missing link in the interpretation of federal character?
The federal character principle, as enshrined in the Constitution, in my opinion, should be expanded. It just says that in the appointment of ministers and special advisors and so on, the federal character principle should be taken into cognizance. I think we should go ahead, because in the interpretation section, I don't think federal character is really defined. That we should go ahead and expand the meaning of federal character to include reference to the 30% affirmative action, to include reference to equal representation by all the states on basis of merit. It is important that we don't lose sight of the essence of merit in implementing the federal character principle. It is absolutely important. Otherwise, we will be paying lip service to federal character.
Where gender is concerned, is equal opportunity within the party only to be seen in the appointments of 1 or 2 women as women leaders in the various committees of the party?
What I'm doing right now is that we are trying to, in fact, we have such a motion, collection of baseline data on the number of women that we have from the local governments up to the national federal level that are involved in decision making. So that with that information, we now have facts presented to the stakeholders that these are the facts on ground. And these are the percentage of women that go out and vote. Is it really fair to give us this when we have this voting and all that? So we are now trying to compile this information. Once they are ready, we will present it to the party as the position of the PDP women.
What should be the party's stand in ensuring that Nigeria catches up with other African countries to lead the way in this democratic race?
Fortunately now Nigeria has a gender policy, and the gender policy says 35%. None of the parties is coming close. You look at the top ESCO, chairman, secretary, the major, zonal coordinators, they are all invariably men. So affirmative action. And secondly, the internal democracy. Let the party too elect their own leaders through a democratic process in which women can participate both as the voters and both as the candidates.
The political parties, as I said before, should also be made to revisit their constitutions for the purpose of reviewing them, so that as to accommodate women further in those constitutions.
Who shall lead the way?
The PDP, which is the ruling party, and I want to use them because I will hold them accountable. Whatever they do, when they sneeze, we all catch a cold. If they had done an affirmative action clause, other parties would have copied them to attract more women and quality women into their parties. Parties must be compelled to entrench quotas and affirmative action principles or practices in their constitutions, and their manifestos must show gender concerns and gender programs that are meant to address the concerns of women when they hold office or otherwise. Now, we have also proposed that some sanction should be placed in the auditing of political parties for their registration and re-registration and whatever. That when they bring their list of nominees and they do not comply with their own constitutional provisions, then INEC should be mandated to hold them accountable and take back their list and ensure that they comply with their own basic rules.
In addition, the series will examine the gender gaps in the Nigerian constitution and the role of various governmental and non-governmental institutions in the episode titled Monitoring the Laws That Create the Enabling Environment.